Thank you for your time. My name is Baitula, and this is Shooting from the Hip. I appreciate you being here. Please keep in mind what we are doing here on Bet On It Shooting from the Hip. We explore human ideas, philosophies, noteworthy information. This exploration is us thinking aloud. A thought exercise, if you will. Jumping into ideas and examining them and re-examining them. You will find we're prone to using adult language when expressing opinions. In keeping with that, you shouldn't believe anything we say. We are not experts of any kind. We're just having fun with these ideas, philosophies, and information in the hopes that you will find it fun and interesting. We encourage you to invest time in searching out these subjects and coming to your own conclusions. Now on with the shit show. Slim, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you very much. Another wonderful day outdoors. Hopefully that means that it'll translate into a wonderful episode. So today's episode, we're actually going to talk about anxiety, stress, and addiction. All right, like the stress that the revving of that car is. Would it be inappropriate if I yelled at him?
I'd say it's a bad way to cope with it, at least.
Maybe. So now, having said that, we'll start with simply with addiction, anxiety, and we'll try to illustrate how that can lend to addictive patterns of behavior within us internally. And we were talking while we were setting up off camera. It speaks to the idea that why we're predisposed to things like addiction, and it's because, again, often you'll hear people use the expression human nature as though that, like, they try to encapsulate all our behaviors as human nature, and it's not. Our behaviors are a product of the way you're conditioning and a combination of the external environment. And what we're designed to do, this is what is part of human nature. We did cover that in an episode. I outlined like 6 different aspects of human nature, and probably the chief critical one, and the one that's proven really useful and useful in terms of making humans a successful species, is adaptability. But it's a double-edged sword. That very adaptability also lends us to forms of addiction, right? So, now having said that, so that's the opening. So, anxiety is, when you're looking for a definition of what anxiety is, according to the internet and in any kind of dictionary that's out there, anxiety is a reaction to fear. So remember, it doesn't have to be whatever the fear is based on doesn't have to be real. It can be a perception, and that can induce a fear response, which would uncontrolled or unrelenting, it would produce anxiety in whomever's experiencing it, right? And I'm sure you've experienced. I know that I have, right?
Yeah, like one form would be social peer pressure. Like it's not a real threat, but
yeah,
it's as real.
But some of it can be very real, like you're falling.
Yeah, I get that sensation.
Yeah, or like a real, when I say falling, like a real fall, like you fall off like a 6-foot ladder. You're not standing at the top of it, so you're part way up. The damn thing, you're reaching too far over and it falls.
I was thinking about those dreams where you're in the sky and you're
falling, you're falling and you end up falling out of bed.
Oh, awful!
I leaped once out of bed, and I don't. The funny thing is, I don't know what precipitated. I don't remember the dream. I just remember just basically kicking my arms and leg and throwing my arms out as hard as I could, and I happened to be close to the edge of the bed, and I ended up on the floor like face down. So I landed kind of like in a push-up position, because as I was going, you're going like you're falling.
That's crazy, waking up in the air.
Can you imagine? So having said that, getting back to anxiety. So anxiety is just basically a reaction to fear, but it can also be a reaction to other potent emotions doesn't necessarily have to be fear. Like, again, you can be overwhelmed by like joy, pleasure. Um, you know, that can lead to an anxious response, right? Because because it's too much and it becomes overwhelming, and then your system in attempting to manage the experience now starts to unload all these stress hormones into your system, which can actually amplify the anxiousness that you're experiencing, right? So anxiety is in part a psychological kind of response to a perception of something, and as well is a biological, physiological response. It's your body going through chemistry, reacting to whatever it is that you're experiencing, right? So, anything you'd like to contribute, or is that, I'm good? I can
No,
keep
I'm
going.
just trying to picture those situations, because I can imagine like
I think,
stimuli fear, but you're not feeling fear. It's joy, like
yeah,
overexcitement.
yeah. It's just being overwhelmed by powerful emotion. Now, having said that, fear is the most powerful emotion. It's the most primal, right? So it has the most sway over us. Most people don't overreact to being overjoyed. There's not, you know what I mean? They don't, but it can. That's the point. The point is, once it's very intense, an emotional response, which typically would be fear associated, right? So anxiety is a disorder. At least it's treated and um, uh, 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 thought of as being a disorder, so that it's treatable. It's a form of mental illness, and that's typically for people who can't manage their anxiety. Like, it gets the best of them, so it completely overpowers them. So it can and does happen, right? Um, the when you're going through the anxiety, and I'm sure you've experienced this. Think about the moments, like it it produces unrealistic fears and excessive worries, and then you start recounting or re-experiencing through flashbacks past traumas, uh, leading to you being like startled, physically kind of, that you'll like retreat from anything you're experiencing because you want to just get away from the stimuli. Um, Always has effects in like our sleeping patterns, or uh, it can produce greater degrees of physical tension in the body, right? Like, contribute to that like internal tension, like where you're just tight, you can't relax, right? So, and it also leads to habitual, ritualistic patterns of behavior, right? That because you're trying to seek comfort, so you try and draw comfort from the same form of behavior over and over and over again. So again, you can see where that can be really problematic, right?
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
yeah. So that's like sort of anxiety, um, kind of defined for the nature of the conversation, at least to get our heads wrapped around it, that it's pretty broad, and there's a lot of factors that can influence it, right? Anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, it was just hard to picture at first, but I, I'd kind of see like, oh, the night before Christmas, you're so excited,
Yeah.
that you're in some sort of shock.
Well, but it's kind of minor, right? Like, for
Yeah,
children, that level of excitement, they're just overjoyed. But again, it can produce like, uh, you know, in, like intense responses. They're like, they get super tight and they squeal and stuff because they can't manage the excitement, right,
yeah.
of
Like the
that
last
moment.
thing you would say is, "Hey, the day before Disneyland, I'm going to tell them right when they're going to bed." Worst idea.
Oh, who's going to sleep?
No, they're screaming right away.
Right.
Ah!
They'll be cranky pants, getting on the plane asleep for the entire ride, right? So, now, according to the Mayo Clinic, the hormone epinephrine, or more commonly known as adrenaline, makes the heart beat faster and causes blood pressure to go up, both good and bad, depending on the circumstances, right? So again, the anxiety can produce that kind of a physiological response where now these stress hormones are being dumped into your system. Now, adrenaline's great when you're in the middle of a fight, not so good when you're trying to manage the anxiety performance, say on an examination that you're ill prepared for, because it just, now you're going to have this complete physiological response. You're going to have other stress hormones dumped into your system. Uh, so it functions. They function as hormones and neurotransmitters, and they produce vasoconstriction and narrowing of blood vessels, increasing blood pressure, increasing heart rate, and blood sugar levels. So you can quickly see where if you can't shut down the anxiety response, and then you're on a simmer of stress hormones, so not like we haven't even talked about cortisol yet, but all these things now floating around in your bloodstream. So what they do is they affect your psychology, so that now, because your body will adapt to those stress hormones, and then the body will it doesn't think, but it'll treat that as the normal function, the way it's supposed to normally function. So now it'll seek out you being more stressed. It'll favor the stress of like the default mode mechanism, which like for an untrained one would allow for somebody then to have like really, it's all self-referential thinking, but it's always of a very negative sort. And then it'll favor the kind of negative stuff based on the stimuli. So if you're stressing about exams, and now there's now you have a big test come, not just a test, you have a project you got to turn in, all this stuff all happening at the same time, it amplifies that. Now it interrupts your sleep pattern, which now again contributes to further hormonal response, which is like against intense hormones that are really only ever really beneficial, like if you're in the middle of your fight or flight response, because you're in the middle of a fight or you're trying to flee a fight. That's the only time those things are beneficial. Outside of those circumstances, like so very physical dangers, it's the only time that they're appropriate. And now they're appearing as a result of, you don't even think about, like, you don't even have to use examination or education. Just think about like the effect that social media has on people, right? So it produces a stress response in the person, and you're not being confronted by a bear who wants to eat you.
Yeah.
Right? You're dealing with this impersonal kind of socialization electronically, right? And again, so we've seen, because now we've had the benefit of it for a better part of like a decade plus, maybe 20 years, and now we're seeing the effects, right? Yeah. That it's produced people who basically had their dopamine systems hijacked, and because of the nature of being human, they're adapting better to it. And it doesn't mean that they're able to manage it better. It means that whatever stresses it's applying to them, now the body's getting better at producing those effects. And so it'll favor thinking that'll produce that effect, cognitive thinking. It'll favor like physical stressors, right? So now your subconscious which is constantly working, will look for cues in the external environment to produce the effect. So you're constantly under constant assault or barrage of stress hormones, and then again, which produce stressful thinking, which, right, it's that trap. And we talked about this before, when we talked about the Holy Trinity, mind, body, and spirit, that it's well understood, the mind-body connection. So this perfectly illustrates that in the most in the most negative way. right? So that disconnection, it really is at work, and it can have profound effects on the individual, right?
I was just gonna add, it's really bad when you consider how much advertising spent on like not real personalities, but you'll have like AI, you'll have people
Right, right.
paid to say things online. There's a there's a large portion of social media that could be good, but it's quickly going into like just rage baiting is a term that's common now.
Right. So we just use it as another form of sparring
Yeah,
when it could, when it has the potential that it could be used really to de-stress each other, to elevate one another. But again, it's all under the context of usage, like how we would choose to use it. So subjectively speaking, everybody who's using it thinks they're right. And not only do they think they're right, they think it's the right to not only share their opinion, but force it down other people's throats. So, and they treat that opinion with the highest regard. So that's where the real failure is. It's not that it's not even in having opinions or even having controversial ones. It's in treating them as though they're the only ones that matter, particularly when it's just what they imagine. It's not rooted in any kind of real, powerful evidence. There's no evidence they're presenting, or if they are presenting, it's a very little bit
it's
that.
like arguments of character, like oh they wouldn't do that.
Well, or even like they'll use confirmation bias, like within their, within the argument that they're making, they'll use something to confirm what they're saying, but that's a questionable source, right? Or a source that can't be validated. You go, well, that evidence kind of renders that evidence kind of useless. Like, it's not really supporting what you're saying,
I'd go as far as
or it is, but it's not. It's not really good, solid empirical evidence. Sorry, you were going to say.
right. I would just say like the quality of the experience is it can itself be negative when you think about like the idea of baiting for interactions, and then what's the most ways to get interactions? Well, it's not positive,
Right.
and
So
it might not even be a real person, of course.
right. So again, you can see very quickly where aggression, hostility, hate, which ultimately, because everyone thinks that hostility and aggression and hate are the enemy. They're not. It's fear. Fear is what leads to that. So, and not being incapable of managing whatever they're being confronted with on social media, they break down under that stress. At least when I say they break down, they respond in an emotional way, when what they should be doing is either out and out simply ignoring it, or I would even go so far as to say, don't allow yourself to be drawn in to debates online. If you're going to have a conversation to that end, person to person, and I don't even mean video chat. I mean that, so if they're not somebody that you shouldn't be giving them even a fraction of your time. You should just be ignoring them. Screw them. Like, because they're certainly not very honorable, because what they've chosen is to use this format to promote their own agenda. And even if that agenda is something as simply as like, I'm better than you, or I'm smarter, or you're wrong and I'm right, it's again more stupidity that feeds into all that anxiety and all that stress, right?
I think I get what you're saying. It's almost like walking into this place that is just full of like, you know, not that they're insincere, but it's like just tricksters almost. Like
Right.
there's not necessarily.
They're contrarians. All they're looking to do is to trigger you. So you would never actively engage with somebody like that. As soon as you got the sense that all they were trying to do is say whatever it would take to get a reaction out of you, you would immediately start distancing yourself from somebody. Why would you engage with someone like that? It'll end up being fruitless, whatever comes of that.
Even if somebody goes like, "Oh, I made a mistake. Oh, I see what you mean." Blah blah blah. It's such a small win. It's better to have that in person where you
Yeah, I
can go
agree.
through like much more granularly go through these things.
And again, in person, person to person, then what you realize is you're dealing with another person. It's how impersonal social media and electronic communication is, and how easily um, it can be misunderstood, whatever somebody's trying to say. So they might not even be trying to trigger you, and then the end result is because maybe they can't explain it adequately, or they don't have the time to really, they don't have the time through a long form conversation able to sort of discuss it to such a degree where now you kind of completely understand what they're trying to say. So there's, you wouldn't respond by being triggered. That's something that happens when you're trying to sum up something very complex in in moments or a paragraph or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And
nobody reads a comment that's like a paragraph for too long.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, if they do, they have good intentions typically, I assume. If
Well,
somebody
you would
it.
hope, but again, like I said, I wouldn't be engaging in that. Like, to me, my use of social media, and I don't have virtually any social media, and the limited format that I do have, I just promote this channel, and I try to get either people to laugh or to get them to pop to in the middle of the day, maybe pause for a moment and give them cause to think. Just go like, shit, that's deep, or man, I never considered that, right? To me, that's the value in social media, and that's how it should be used, like everything, in balance and sparingly. And as soon as it becomes excessive, then you get all the keyboard warriors, some chunky tub of lard who's like sitting around in holy underwear, and I'm not talking about like spiritual. You would, and just going after anyone because they've either been picked on their whole life, they're maladjusted, or they think that they have the right to say it because they're trapped by their own subjectivity and the cult of personality and the cult within a cult within a cult within a cult, right? There's no promotion of the idea of like, here, reasonable thinking, using logic, and then trying to understand what's going on so that you can, not so that you can get a consensus view of whatever the issue is, but just so that you on the individual level have a more complete understanding of whatever the focal point or the focus of the conversation might be. See, that kind of dialogue is beneficial. It allows for growth. That's how you learn, right? Again, that's why we engage in this. Like, so before we started recording our conversations, even like once we're done here and we finish recording for the day, you and I are going to continue talking about this sort of stuff, right? Because the type of conversations that we have are always long form, and we look at something as best as we possibly can from as many different perspectives as possible to try and gain a real broad understanding of whatever it is that we're discussing. So again, you don't hear people talk like that amongst themselves, right? And maybe that should be the focal point, and perhaps that it would be more constructive in education to approach education like this. But the experts and professors, they're only thing they're really concerned with is their paycheck and the minimum amount. Why would they be any different than the rest of us? We're all programmed like that, right? So that's not human nature. That's behavior that's been trained into us. It's very specific. It's not who you are. It's a distortion of what we are, right? So you can, and again, it just illustrates how easy it is to hijack the psychology and the biology of any single human. And so, and if you're not actively like hijacking your own to produce the best possible effect, that means somebody else is doing it without your consent and producing a negative effect, typically.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when it comes to social media, like those events where people who are well adjusted see like something that's called rage bait, whatever form it takes, they just look at that and they don't have that same appreciation that somebody who's addicted to that kind of stimuli is. They'll see that and they'll go, this is my spot, this is where I need to be.
Yeah, and then
someone who's well adjusted, they just go,
Well,
I'm
this
not going to help. This is a fruitless conversation.
right. They'll
It's
see
performative.
right. They'll see how ridiculous it is, and then be like, "I'm not going to be a participant in that." Right? That's intelligent. That's like, so you can be very clever and smart, and most of them who engage in that kind of very negative discourse through social media, uh, they're they're not incompetent. They're not stupid. They just behave stupidly, right? Like, so so an act of real intelligence is being able to look at that and seeing the trap and going, I'm not. All I have to do is not participate. Right? Seek out the like-minded. Somebody's you know, looking to try and produce a very specific response in you. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to elicit a negative emotional response, which, again, can lead to all sorts of anxiety and for the person trying to manage it. I go, why would you do that? Why would you willfully subject yourself to that when it's something that's so easily avoidable, right?
Yeah, like I met really, really smart people, and you know, any emotion, yeah, that's going to affect you. If they're not emotionally stable, like they have these preconditions where they have to have these online arguments, they're going to have a day that's just shitty.
Yeah.
Like, to put it bluntly.
Yes, I completely agree. So I I want to just now I want to sort of address addiction and like define it, and then we can play with that as well. So, um, addiction is the condition of being addicted to any particular substance, thing, or activity, and usually it involves exhibiting compulsive, chronic, or physiological or psychological need, which forms a uh, habitual pattern for that particular substance, behavior, or activity, right? And so again, we understand it's been around, well, forever. But in modern, in terms of a modern context, addictions to things like heroin, alcohol, gambling, smoking, vaping. Remember, the addiction can be anything: sex, food, you name it. It's an obsessive kind of uh, um, pursuit of something, right?
Right, like hoarders might have comfort in possession, so their addiction is possession.
To be, yeah, and to be, the more surrounded they are by it, the more comforting it is. But no matter how much they have around them, it's never enough. So they're kind of trapped,
Yeah, they
right?
might see it as stability. Other people say, hey, man, that's a tomb. Like, you're encased.
I completely agree. Like, but for them, they're like, it's insulation. I'm insulated from the world. Look how much of a barrier there's between. And the only reason somebody would do that is out of fear, because they fear the outside world. They fear interaction, and and maybe that's the point. The point is then to here you have to, part of mind or mastery of mind means maturing out emotionally or mastering your own emotions, so they're no longer, you don't get wild swings and extremes of emotions that you experience, that they're kind of you moderate them in such a way that they're not overwhelming, right? So you have the experience, but you're not, as a result of that emotion, you're not shutting down, right? That you're incapable of dealing with the emotion, and usually it's whatever the source of that feeling is, right?
Yeah, like a big example is like if you have a buddy, good time Gary, he likes to drink and party, he's awesome, but he doesn't stop. He can't allow that good time to stop.
Yeah. So he's the guy kicking in the window. I don't remember doing that. Right? Good time, Gary.
Good time Gary doesn't do good things after
No.
2 p.m.
Yeah. Or the good time Gary that I knew growing up was a guy who I'm not going to mention him by his real name, but he would become blotto. He would, right? So he'd reach a certain point where, and it was always like excessively drunk, borderline blackout drunk, and he would do the stupidest, the stu- just like he'd go like, it's clearly behavior driven by alcohol, and it's the dumbest stuff you could imagine. Sometimes it's really funny, but most of the time it's just really dumb.
Right. And that like that's a bad adaptation. It's funny when you're a teenager. Afterwards, it's like that's not good. Actually, even at teenager age, like it's not going to be drunk that bad.
I always thought, again, alcohol, or regardless of whatever mind altering substance, that there's a there's a balancing point. Like there's such thing as too much, and you could even say not quite enough, right? So it's to find that middle ground, the middle way. So if you're going to be using the stuff, again, if you use it more sparingly, the effects are a bit more pronounced, so you need less to have a good time. But the moment that you're like trapped into the addiction or into the pattern of behavior, and the addiction might not actually be like drinking beer. The addiction is that pattern of behavior.
Yeah, like people who are typically angry, they're going to watch sports and enjoy because they're angry at the other team. For whatever reason, even though it's a negative stimulus, it's still something that their body feels is required. For some reason, sports teams came up
Yeah,
as,
well, because it does draw out that like rivalry, that sense of like for a person, they're my team, my tribe, and and again, people get caught up in the fervor of all that stuff. I mean, look at soccer hooligans, right? They tear apart stadiums
yeah,
when their team loses, or they have been known to. So it, and again, how much of that is like fueled by alcohol, and you know again, this idea that like can you call that an addiction to their team, even like that their preference is so profound that now it makes them do the most incredibly stupid things, right? Like, so, and again, it's fair to describe that behavior as being stupid. There's no real healthy benefit in it.
yeah,
So, so then again, it's about addressing when we talk about any of the stuff that we talk about. So this idea of anxiety, stress, and addiction to self, which we're progressively been moving towards this idea of addiction to ourselves, right? To that subjective self, which we're kind of now tripping over. So I don't know if you're aware of, or familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he's been labeled as being pretty controversial. But if you ever listen to him speak, I don't, the last thing I think you would think is that is controversy, and he does welcome universities and academic institutions like that into what he's doing now. I don't want to get into the specifics of what he does, but he makes a very interesting point with regards to the arousal of stress hormones that create or that contribute to that mind-body connection for fear, anger, and aggression, and to a degree, I guess, psychological pain it creates as well, and that gives you a rush, a physiological rush. So now you get cortisol, which is your primary stress hormone, uh, adrenaline or epinephrine. These things now, because you're constantly being bombarded by it, because you're constantly, you know, through the mind-body connection, going through like things like fear, anger, aggression, experiencing pain. The addiction is your body adapting better to all those more negative aspects of who we are and the way we respond. So it becomes better at it. So then now you're more easily triggered. You have a shorter fuse. You'll go from anger to rage very quickly. You doubt me? Road rage.
oh yeah,
Right, right. So it's because unbeknownst to us, while we're doing this stuff, that what we're doing is we're training our body to favor that biology. because it's a very specific biology, right? And then the biology feeds into the psychology that drives, like, again, fear, anger, aggression, pain, all that stuff, right? So now you're trapped in this cycle, and we do virtually everything we do is cycles of patterns of behavior, right? Here's something you were going to say.
Yeah, I was just thinking, it's interesting because personality is somewhat malleable in the sense that it will change over the span of a lifetime depending on if you work on it or not. But I think
But
people,
even from just experience, I think it can grow too, your personality, that is.
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's probably how everything changes over time. Like, because not only do we see ourselves as um, like this personality, not the true personality we are through our actions and everything, just
Right.
how we self-reflect, and we almost see ourselves as that personality plus the set of behaviors we would do in like a whole complex of situations.
But we never see that ourselves in that capacity as an observer. It's always as the experiencer. It's
Right.
always as the subject, right? The problem with that is that that implies then that you don't have a broad um, objective observation of your behavior because you're too caught up in the behaviors.
Right.
So then that becomes the trap. So then it becomes easier then to get caught up in those really, really intense emotional responses, and which lead to like physical behaviors and stuff. And then, because anytime, if you show anybody that extreme kind of behavior that they're capable of, like if you could, produce a, streamed video, go, here, this is you. Most people will be surprised by like just how much. It's not that they're surprised that they reacted, but how much, to the degree that they did react. Like, wow, might have been excessive, right? And almost always, as long as they'll have regret so long as there's any kind of like injury or as a result of that outburst or that extreme kind of behavior, right? So again, the addiction then becomes to being subjective, to being the experiencer, and then to asserting like whatever tribal dominance or the, however you view yourself, that you want to assert yourself as being important. Uh, what's what road rage is? How dare you cut me off?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
It also implies actions and beliefs you need to have.
right. So again, you can see where this can very quickly turn into a horrible downward spiral, and it's a result of the mind-body connection, right? Like, or that's a big contributor to it. So hence, it really does speak to the importance then of us as individuals. Wow, that's a loud motorcycle. It really does speak to how important it is to cultivate an, an objective observer capacity, right? That you're a critical thinker. And the first person that you're critical with is yourself. You start looking at your own behaviors in the moment as they're occurring. You go, hey, did I just do that? Did I just say that? Right?
So like thorough self-reflection, also being accepting of the fact that we're all monkeys. We do bad and good.
Right.
The change of your method of being. So, I start eating better, running, I'm taking care of myself.
Well, now you're talking about, again, that what you identified there is like, again, how you can use the mind-body connection to produce a positive response. But that's because you're critical in your capacities and your awareness of yourself. So it requires you to be the only way to really effectively do that is to be in the moment, right? And in the moment, you're aware of what it is that you're saying and doing. So instead of it all being a reaction, which is what commonly occurs, right? Because what's road rage? It's an unbridled emotional outburst of rage over something that's like incidental, right? you're not catching yourself doing it. You're just, as soon as you have the trigger, as soon as that initiates the behavior, you're all in. And then after the fact, you're going, like, I'm not even sure if people do that after the fact, that they sit there and go like, why did they just do that, right? But that requires a capacity then to be aware of your own behaviors and the external environment and how you're interacting with the set environment. And that the reason why it's important is because it leads to that addiction to those stress hormones, or the arousal of those stress hormones. So now that constantly, again, you're in this horrible like cycle or loop where it just feeds that kind of the worst kind of behaviors, right? And here's the question: is that how you really want to live? Is that how anybody would choose to live? Because I'm sure that if you could get anybody, even the most outrageous person, in a candid moment, they would say no. Right? Like that you get them isolated in a candid moment where you can talk to them person to person, they'd be like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As strange as it sounds, if somebody almost clips your car and you go, oh, good, it didn't happen, that's the most positive response you can have.
Yeah.
Hey, that could have been bad. Fuck.
Yeah. So guess what? Dodged a bullet.
Yeah.
That's outstanding.
That's a grateful way to express, what happened instead of rage.
Right. But here's the problem. People become like addicts in the sense that they need the problems in their life to reaffirm all those things that they're experiencing, that anger, rage, hate, aggression, all that stuff. So, because they want that arousal, right? And here's the worst part: it might be the most arousal they get from their day-to-day life, because they're not stimulated by healthy, positive things. They're only stimulated by things that feed into those pre-existing behaviors, which were trained into them. Nobody would choose to behave like that. You behave like that because you're trained to favor a certain particular pattern of behavior, which produces a very specific chemistry in the body that now you start to favor. Remember, this is humans becoming adapted to that, and they adapt so well that now they favor that. So then the deeper you're into that kind of, you're like 5 decades into your life, the harder it is to break that pattern, or to break that addiction to the arousal that's produced by stress hormones, which induce an extreme emotional response. See where I'm going with all this? Is it all making sense?
Yeah, it accumulates and also spreads to other behaviors. Like somebody who's aggressive might start, road rage incidents, actively trying to fight, and of course they have a bat in the back because it's behavior they believe.
Or in the U.S. and in some cases they have firearms. Like, you really want to be. I'm sure that there's incidences of people in the midst of road rage and shooting each other, right? Like,
yeah.
So again, is it really like? Is it the kind of an event that would make it worthy of you, like pointing a gun at another person, pulling the trigger?
Check out our episode on subjectivity and objectivity, I guess.
Well, again, but
if you don't have an answer, maybe.
It speaks to the importance of like subjectivity and objectivity. Or like, and again, I'm not interested in force feeding people this, but you present it in a way, and in the course of the conversation, and it should almost explain itself, or like people should see the reason and they go, that's completely reasonable and rational, right? From somebody who's irrational.
Right. And I bet that's a strange moment. They're like, oh yeah, they don't support it, but they're still in that kind of lane where they're not going to change. Because you think about like smokers, they'll tell you not to smoke.
Right, while they're taking a long, hard drag, and they inhale so deep, you go like, fuck, you got like half that cigarette.
Some Bugs Bunny type smoke.
Yeah, and they're blowing like an enormous, smoke rain.
But it's good to see that, like, that person would be honest. a lot of people have like a disconnect between their behaviors and just
Right, because again, because of they favor that subjectivity. Remember, you're adaptive, so you become better at it. So they would therefore become better at not just interpreting but experiencing things subjectively. Instead of going here, there's an alternative, right? We could be critical objective thinkers and we can come at this from completely different, but no one's ever told you that, like, here, that there's art to thinking. There's virtually art in everything that we do as human beings. So you can be artful in the expression of anything. So what does artful mean? And you become creative. Well, you can only be creative as somebody who's objective. You allow, like, you drop your inhibitions, and now you allow for your creativity to express itself regardless of what you're dealing with. In this case, it's how you're interpreting things or the way that you think. So being a critical objective thinker is paramount. So when I say it, it's not a euphemism. It's the kind of thing that can make all the difference in the way that you conduct yourself from moment to moment. Subjectivity, where you're trapped in those negative cycles, will almost always lead to extended kind of things like depression and very negative behaviors. So if that's true, then why are you favoring those behaviors and toying with skirting disaster, or trying and dealing with, like, the worst of the negative emotions and experiences that you can have as a human being, versus if all that's produced of the way that we adapt, and we're basically conditioned or trained to be that way, then why wouldn't you be actively trying to train yourself to go the other way, to favor objectivity, to favor emotional stability and maturity, to favor thoughtful, mindful discourse for the purposes of understanding and learning, so that you don't have to get caught up in those negative emotions. And then when you're being celebratory, you can revel in whatever it is that you're celebrating without fear of now that negative stuff. Once you drop your inhibitions as a result of, like, alcohol consumption or whatever, that suddenly now you turn into the asshole at the party nobody wants, right? Was that Robin Williams joke? He's answering the phone,
I'm unfamiliar.
Oh, okay, so he's answering the phone, he's going like this, and he goes, "Oh, hey, it was a great party last night." "What?" "I shit in your tuba." Right? So
yeah, that's not good.
Right? Yeah, like, you go, wait a minute. How could you have been so out of it that you didn't realize that you did something like that? And it's the kind of thing where you go, why would you want anybody like that around?
Well, I was thinking, not for this specific case, but like these people that need to have these behaviors, I think they either have like some proxy of a meaningful thing, like, oh, there's a bad thing, so I gotta, do the behaviors that stops the bad thing, whatever issue it is.
Well, like I said,
like Coke versus Pepsi type thing.
Right. Most of us aren't even aware that that's what's happening, that this is what's going on in the course of in the course of the way that we live our lives. So you become addicted to your own thoughts and the emotions associated with them, right? So, because all those things trigger the bodily responses. So now that's the complete circle. So it's not just, you're not just addicted to the arousal of hormonal response. You're also addicted to the thoughts, right? And so again, think about the default mode network of the average person. All the thoughts are self-referential, and a large majority, 80%, maybe to as much as 90% of them, are negative, right? So that's going on without anyone exercising any kind of discipline in the content of their thoughts, or the emotions that they experience as a result of those thoughts, which produce the physiological rush or the emotional. So again, you're trapped in this vicious circle that you have to break it. You have to start you have to start interjecting behaviors, thoughts that are contrary to the negative ones.
Yeah, and that's such a wide net. Like what you're saying casts such a wide net. There's a range of responses. Like an overproductive person who has a fear response, they might become like a tyrant.
Yeah,
Underproductive, they might be like a sloth. Like those people that just mass consume TV and they're drunk all the time. And those people might come from like pretty similar backgrounds. Like for whatever reason, their psychology went, "Oh, this is how I'm gonna deal with this problem," and it's not dealt with properly.
right. Their way of dealing with it is not dealing with it,
Yeah.
right? So then they end up becoming addicted to their to that very life, that negative life. That's the addiction. And here's the weird part: they don't even like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they'll always justify why they're there, like that victim mentality.
Yeah.
They'll find a justification. I'm trapped here because of this and this, or whatever it is that they're gonna place the blame on, right? So that's the trap. So how many people do you think that in let's say the last 20 minutes or half hour that we've been talking, did we just describe? Maybe everybody.
Oh yeah, at some point of time for sure.
Right, so that means, and so now we'll add another, and more interesting element. So now, if you're alone and there's no triggers outside of you, your memory will start being the trigger because you'll start to relive a past event, right? So the undisciplined mind, it wanders and it starts recounting something. And again, if it's a part of the default mode network, that means it's going to be it's something negative. So that negativity will again induce now the emotions, which will induce the hormonal response, and then you end up in constantly in these strong, powerful emotional experiences that alter your brain chemistry, that alter and you get good. Not only you get good at it, but on some level you want it.
Yeah, like it's a grudge that you really want.
Because it's the reason why you want it is because it's familiar. So the thing that you're familiar with, it's predictable. You know how it's going to play out. So it's in its predictability that again condemns you, like you're doomed, because that part of you again becomes so adapted to it that becomes your new safe and secure, even though you're in the midst of horrible feelings, horrible physiology and body chemistry, all that stuff is going on. But because you're so familiar with it, then again, it's another reason why you get entrenched in those patterns.
Yeah, and
Right?
there's no room for a mistake where it's like, oh, I made a mistake, I'm just stupid. It happens, and then you continue. There's no healthy response. Like you say, a lot of things are just reactive behavior.
Right. And again, it gets because we adapt to it so well. Then, as soon as you have that, you just initiate that memory. The physiology now switches over so that you can have that kind of an emotional response, that kind of, hormonal release. So all these things, so it traps you then in the experiences of the past. And then the fears that you have about how the future will play out. All these things are triggering all this stuff. So for most of us, we're probably supremely chaotic internally, and not just like your brain and body chemistry, but now the contents of your thoughts. You're trapped by them, right? Like, and you're so caught up in them, you can't break with them.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of students experience that.
Can you
like,
imagine?
Yeah, like, oh, my roommate left the dishes out, and I have a test tomorrow, and I have an assignment next week that I'm not prepared for, and it snowballs. My parents don't like me, or whatever.
Right. So it's the process of recounting it. So for them, it's not just an explanation, it's the justification for why they are the way they are.
That's exactly how I see it. Like, it imbues meaning from something that's fucking meaningless, because it goes from dishes to like, I'm not
I'm not
worth.
worthy because I couldn't regularly stay on top of the dish load.
Yeah,
And now I translate that. Now I'm in school. I'm not worthy. I failed another quiz, or I might be able to make it up for the final exam. And
and that feeling of unworthiness, or you know, so many inadequate feelings of inadequacy, that just is stress. That's where it's sourced.
what I completely agree. And here's the worst part about it: we're not even accurately remembering those events. We're embellishing the events.
Oh yeah,
Right,
true.
right, because you want the justification to be obvious, right? So that your victimization makes perfect sense because now you've altered the details just ever so slightly. So you go, oh, so when you recount it to somebody, they go, oh, I feel bad for you. I understand now why you're the way you are. It's like, no, that's completely irresponsible. It's the individual who's trapped in those negative patterns, not taking any accountability for their behaviors, no responsibility for how they conduct themselves, and then, like I said, and then they're trapped in those patterns, and now they offer justification for them patterns. They become the perfect victim. I can't do anything.
I have a great example. I'm not sure if this was a true study or if it was just some random video on the internet, but it suggested that there was a study. They had people wearing fake scars as makeup, and on the second interview, you know, they put the scars on the person, interview them with someone else. The thing is, they did not put the scars on. They just pretended to put makeup on them the
Right,
second
right.
time, and every single person had a psychological effect where they thought 100% these people were reacting like they had some face on them, or there's social cues that were misread because of this preconceived notion of, oh, I'm going in there ugly, I'm going in there
Oh,
scarred.
right, okay. Uh,
And like, perfect example in my opinion.
yeah, honestly, it does. It speaks to this idea, right? Like, so perception becomes everything, or manage the perceptions to such a degree that you're not interpreting anything. You're going here. What are the actual data points? What are the facts?
Yeah,
What's statistically verifiable? Right? You can vet out the facts and then draw conclusions from the facts. But because we sell ourselves a particular story, we're trapped by the random thought generator that revolves around that story, and past events, and then our chemistry, our body's chemistry, and our brain chemistry now works with that. This is the mind body connection run amok.
yeah,
So then you basically have this horribly stressed out existence.
yeah. That makes you a perfect consumer. Like, oh, you don't look quite like this model, so maybe you should buy our brand because you might be ugly. It's like nobody's a supermodel. Even supermodels get photoshopped. Like, that's one example that's rampant.
Well, okay, so again, it's because they favor these predictable outcomes, right? So I don't want to use the word manifest, but it might be accurate. So because when they're projecting, so all this is going on, drawing from the past, they're not in the present moment. So then they're projecting onto the future. And what do they want in the future? They want all these good things, but predictably, they want a predictable future, which means that they want the stuff that they're already familiar with, or connected to, or adapted to, which is something negative. So that's what gets promoted into the future. So then they never break the chain. So they're constantly living this living these negative cycles over and over again, year after year. Yeah, no wonder people break under that kind of strain and stress, right? And that's a long, slow burn, right? So again, it's a shitty place to find yourself. But there's a bright side to all of this. So all of that might be true. Then you as an individual can hijack all of that and then produce positive effects and outcomes in yourself. But that requires retraining, right? And so one of the chief things is training to be present in the current moment, right? So that requires some form of meditation, right? Because you got to recondition the nervous system. Now, yeah, and then on top of that, then if you're having reoccurring thoughts and they're negative, and you're now, because you're getting better at catching yourself in those, then what you do is you interject a positive thought, right, over top of the negative thought, right? So you consciously, so again you draw on your experiences. Nobody has purely shitty experiences. You have great positive experiences. So you go through the process of re-experiencing that moment. When I say re-experiencing, that like the joy and stuff from that moment, you get to experience it or have that feeling again, which produces elevated states, which means now that your brain chemistry and your body's chemistry is getting into a rest position, reabsorbing stress hormones, and now you're decompressing. Your blood pressure drops, your heart rate drops. All these things that are applied against you, you can, again, depending on how you approach this, how disciplined you are, you can override those things with things that are beneficial, and that will lead to more beneficial outcomes. And I'm not talking about wishful thinking. I'm talking about favoring the present moment. I'm talking about using positive affirmations, right? So instead of like you go like my life's shit, I suck. Life is beautiful. The world is beautiful, right? So you experience that, and then you experience that, and it can have, again, the reverse effect of the addiction. It's using addiction to produce a beneficial outcome.
Yeah, it's strange to say that in bad situations there's space to be grateful, but
Right,
like nearly getting hit by a car and going, "Oh, I'm grateful, I'm okay, he's okay, we both get to see our
right,
family."
right.
There's extreme gratitude in that.
Ex- Completely correct. So, but that requires us as individuals then to be more present. So we understand as human beings, we're predisposed to being, and perhaps you could even say it's a design flaw, but it's only, you have to think of like us as human beings as being like a combination of hardware and software. So the hardware is the body, the nervous system, and all the processes that are embodied in that. And then the software is your psychology. So when you're when and because it favors, because it's so easily adaptable, and it can become addicted to certain patterns, what you do is try to hijack those very patterns by, again, interceding or interjecting things that are beneficial contents of your thoughts, beneficial thoughts. It doesn't mean you're not going to have negative ones, but now what you're offering your own psychology and biology is a counterbalance to all the negativity,
Yeah,
right? And that's how you have to think of it,
like you're working out of a deficit and you're getting better and better.
right. So the focus then has to be on what is it that you can do that will elevate you, and produce elevated sense of feeling and an elevated sense of self and real satisfaction. Well, start with the things that you love to do, because the love of doing them means that you'll derive some kind of joy and small amount of pleasure from always doing them. And then you have to think about, like, again, what's required in terms of like conditioning your nervous system. So as far as I'm aware, meditation, which includes things like yoga and stuff, and there's many different forms. The idea is to train the mind to always return to the present moment, right? So then what you're doing is the moment you find yourself your thoughts wandering into the past or projecting into the future, you bring your attention right back to the moment you're in, right? And then don't characterize the moment. You don't characterize it, oh, it sucks. No, it's whatever it is. But just bring your attention right back to the present, current moment. So what you're slowly undoing, it's like you have a knot of shoelaces, and you're pulling on the loose threads to try and pull the knot apart, right? So in terms of the way our physiology and our psychology works, and especially in terms of that one aspect of human nature, which is adaptability, you're trying to now influence the adaptability. So what happens is you become better adapted at being like elevated physically and psychologically. So that's going to mean on some level that means you being creative. So you always wanted to sing or play music, learn how to play the guitar. That's the solution to that problem. That now you have a creative outlet, or paint, or whatever, right? And then that becomes a way of like you, again, a small measure of gratitude and a sense of accomplishment, the physical aspect of who you are, something that will force you, to challenge you physically, so that you're expended. So you, at the end of like whatever the training session is, you're kind of a bit worn out, and that it again, those kind of physical releases, enormously beneficial. So it speaks to how you're influencing the adaptation of yourself as a human being. So you're going, here, I'm no longer going to be allowing things to randomly occur in the chaos of the world we live in, to have these kind of effects on us, particularly when you can act to such a degree that you can choose patterns of behavior that are beneficial and positive, right? And where you're nurturing yourself, but you're again hijacking that portion of your human nature, which allows for you to adapt perfectly to anything. So you provide the right stimuli, and then therefore it's not unreasonable to think then that you will become more fully well-rounded, more balanced, more whole, more pleasant, and have a genuinely positive experience, right? So that's really like, so when we're talking about addiction to self and stress and anxiety, that's what those things are doing. That's why, so for so many of us who experience life purely as a negative, what I'm offering to them is that you don't have to, but then it requires you to do things that you've not done before, to think in a way that you've not thought before, right? So it really means seeking the undiscovered country, that going into the unknown, and going with an open mind, and an open heart. You go, here, I'm just gonna do the things I love to do. I'm gonna surround myself with those things. I'm gonna do those things I'm required to do, because again, practical concerns of living in this shit society. Which, what does it want from you? Consume, compete, right? You get to choose the degree to which you're gonna do that. You can have that kind of influence. You don't have to be trapped by it, right? But that falls to the individual. So whose responsibility is it? It's always falls to you, the individual. You can do this. Seek out others who are already doing what you want, which the very thing you would wish to do or to achieve. And then you create a community where now you share your ideas. Here, this is what I do, or that I do this. You might want to give it a try. And the whole point too is that part of it, this, exploring undiscovered country, is that everything should be new.
Oh, and the fact it's so cumulative really helps this, because it's going to get worse if you're already in a bad position.
Yeah.
It's going to get much better if you're working towards a better position.
Yes.
And the choice has to be made. That's the real driving factor.
Right. And so the choice is that I'm going to take active responsibility and control of my life, to at least to the degree and extent at which I can, right? And that if you're looking for a savior, you're looking for salvation, you're the one who's going to save you. It's not going to come from outside of you, which is what we're all been. Think about that. We've all been trained. The great leader, the charismatic leader is going to show the way. You become a great leader. Don't look for a great leader. Become the great leader. And not because you want to lead others. You just want to have all those qualities. You want to have a full, realized existence. Well, you're not going to have that if you're trapped in habitual patterns of behavior, thinking, emotions, and psychology that are all negative. And with a small reprieve, you get high or drunk to sort of it becomes this way of managing all that shittiness, and you think that you're feeling better, but you're not. You're just contributing further to that, to how negative that feeling can be.
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna say social media is terrible for that, but it's such a good platform to share good ideas. Like for genuine interaction, love the internet. For bad interaction, the internet's the worst.
Yeah, and like I said, my part in it and my usage of it, again, is always towards the benefit of the individual. I'm not interested in contributing. I spent a lifetime of being trapped, and now I'm not. I don't think I'm there. But now that I feel in partly liberated, now I want to help others to liberate themselves. And again, it's in the exchange of ideas. Ideas were the trap. They're more powerful than fucking iron chains. But guess what? Ideas can also break chains.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, this video is not one to sit down, like, this whole channel, actually. You're not gonna sit down, eat chips, and watch this. Like, especially a full bag of chips. Like,
No,
this is what you watch when you're doing the dishes, mopping the floor.
Yeah, and you're trying to you're listening. You're actually genuinely trying to connect with the information. Go here. What's actually being said? Is it reasonable? Or is it? Or I'm full of shit. But that's for you, the individual, to figure that out on your own. And all I'm doing is providing you a way to see yourself and look at yourself from a perspective that you may not have ever had before.
Yeah, it's impossible to go through the whole video and not go, oh man, I've done that. Oh fuck, I'm an idiot. Like this negative self-response is good. You should have that, but you should see
Well,
it.
it's just a part of what we are.
Right.
And I'm like going here, but you don't have to be a victim of it.
Right. I'm saying, like, to notice it, that's a very good start. And then to go, okay, wait a
100%.
minute. I'm noticing bad behavior. I have the agency to change it. Hey, now you're in the moment.
Yeah, 100%. And so it's something that all of us are capable of. That's the other thing. And guess what? Sometimes it will be an enormous burden. It won't happen easily. Other times it'll be effortless. So you just take the moment as it happens. So if it's easy, great, good for you. If it's not easy, get your shoulder in there and grind it out, right? Like, sorry about your luck.
It's better than not dealing with it.
Right, because the alternative is to just drown in all the negativity, and you don't have to, right? And in the age now of increased mental health issues, there's no, beyond the pharmaceutical responses, there's nobody offering up here. You can take control of your own existence, and you can self-direct it to such a degree that you can feel satisfied, maybe more often than not, and good about yourself and the life you're living. I go, like, what else do you want? What could be more worthy of you as an individual? Right? But that requires you to be thoughtful, present. It requires you to do things that you've not done before and think in ways that you've not thought before. It's all an exploration. So as a result of that, you should be prepared to make mistakes. But the point is to keep moving forward.
Right. Like, I find it so silly. We live with all these slogans of, like, love, appreciation, mental health awareness. Anxiety and depression's on a rise like crazy.
Yeah.
What's the solution? Get your boots on, go play in the mud and the rain. that's a weird thing to tell somebody. Like, oh, I have to get dirty. I have
Yeah,
to.
you have to. Unfortunately, that's the truth. But part of it is because we've never been adequately prepared. No one's ever sat down to explain this. There are more and more individuals now coming out of the woodwork who do talk like this um, and are talking about that. The way that we function as human beings, and that you can actually do something about it, right? Because whereas before, most of us felt so disempowered. The life you have was just kind of like the whatever the hell it became. So you didn't feel like uh, an active pilot of your own existence. Whereas all I'm offering you is that you can empower yourself. But to do that, it requires you doing things that you've not done before. And again, largely because it's never been brought to your attention. I hear very often from people who are like, I can't do that. It's not. I'm like, remember, the moment you say no, then you've dictated the direction of this. So here's a novel idea. How about you force yourself to stick it out and you do it, right? Again, I don't care if other people do it or don't do it. I'm just doing the most that I can do, which is just the sharing of ideas. Beyond that, the only person I can change is me. So these conversations and the topics that we discuss are all a result of all my own efforts to change myself. That's it, right? So I'm not here to change the world. But here's the weird thing. The paradox is that by everyone actively changing themselves, the world has to change, right? So you don't have to like it the way it is, but where else are you going to go? Where else is there to go? This is the society we have, and you didn't create it. Much like the identity that you have, which you didn't create, your personality, which maybe you've contributed to development of, but all those things, your identity, all that stuff, those were all hoisted upon you. Your political views, your religious views, most of us live those as tradition. My family did it, my parents did it, their parents did it, so I do it.
Right.
So you never chose that. You were just raised within it. It never occurred to you that, like, here, it might actually be part of the problem.
It's almost like everybody's faced, like, this is an old expression, but I'm changing it. It's like somebody's faced with a mountain. Everybody's faced with their own mountain, and you have a spoon, and you're the monkey to move it. Like, there's no option.
Right.
It's either you move the mountain and you die while doing it, or you don't move the mountain and you die while you don't move it.
So what do you think's more worthy of you then?
Yeah.
Right. It's maybe dying on the mountaintop while you're trying to dig a tunnel through it. Maybe there's more value in that. Again, like I said, all these things are at work, and you can direct these things that are at work, influencing you, and you can actively take control of that as an individual. And I don't expect you to do it alone. So you have to. That's going to, on some level, require you to seek out others who are on the same path, on the same journey. This is the way. You seek each other out and you support each other, but you can't do it for anybody. So you should always be like ships passing in the night. Your paths will cross, but then eventually at some point you're going in opposite directions. That's a real community, right? We're here just out of the fact that you're human and I'm human, and we can relate to each other. That because of the fact that we're connected that way, then I'm gonna hold out my hand open, go, here, can I help you? And then you should turn around and do it to the person standing behind you, because even if it's a little bit, remember it moves the ball down the field, right? And we're all trying to get the ball from one end of the field to the other.
Well, one thing I really like about this podcast is it's really just that instance of the boat passing by. Every time they click on to watch these videos, it's you're opening yourself up for reevaluation. They watch our content to get what could be said in maybe a couple of, like, 20-second sentence, but the experience that we're going through, this video that we're recording currently, gives them opportunities to spend 2 hours and go, I've experienced that specific set of conditions. Oh, I've been angry like that in the car.
Right.
Like, I think when you say, like, boats passing by, that's just an instance of awareness, and that's the benefit of this. It's wildly successful in that regard, because one person watched it and they're like, I'm not going to eat half a bag of chips.
Yeah, I again, it's why I do this. I'm not necessarily interested in being a podcaster. I don't have an issue with it, but and I don't have a message to promote. We've had enough of that wokeness, all that other stuff. I'm not promoting a message. All I'm doing is sharing an idea. It's a very distinct difference, right? Because the sharing of the ideas, I don't have any expectations. You're not supposed to adopt this. Even I tell you at the beginning, right? When we started this video, you're not supposed to believe anything that I say. What you're supposed to do is figure the shit out on your own. But I can act like a signpost and go, hey, have a look over here.
Yeah.
And then not just a surface kind of look. I'll give you a deep dive into it so you can dissect it as much as you want for yourself, for your own benefit, right? So I don't know, maybe it's the father in me, because I have 2 adult children. So, and if you think that I talk to them differently, I talk to them the exact same way that I'm talking to the camera, to anyone who's listening to this. I don't hold back, right? But that's because I value and favor people being upfront about what they're thinking and doing. So
yeah, don't believe anything we say, and then we spend 2 hours saying being good is good. You can do the good. Do the good.
Be the good.
We like you, by the way. Have a fun day.
But I'm considering that the alternative is that, like, that you can just wrap yourself up in all your own stupidity and live an entire life like that. To me, I don't see the value in it. And my personal tragedies and trauma led me here. So, amor fati. I had come at this with enthusiasm over my fate. The fact that I experienced all that shit was allowed for me to get here. Because without those negative experiences, I would never have sought this information out. I would never have made the efforts to cultivate the kind of understanding that I'm presenting on camera. So that's it. Right? So, and again, remember, at the end of the day, I don't care if you believe me or you don't. In fact, fuck you, right? Like, so you take that for what it's worth. None of that matters. What matters to me is what you do or don't do. And it only matters in a small way. What really matters to me is what I do or I don't do. So that's where my focus is. What am I doing to make a better contribution? Am I evolving? Am I evolving as a person? Have I become a better person? And it's it doesn't matter if I have or if I haven't. It's not the answers that enlighten you. It's the questions.
Well, I was gonna say, through this process, you're essentially saying to a camera, like, be grateful. It's a lovely experience. And you're not saying that like, oh, it's all rainbows and sunshine.
No, it's not. Right? But again, because I'm not trying to delude anybody.
Right.
I'm not.
This is a good contribution, essentially, to what you truly, like, you don't have to believe in it. It's just real. Like, it's obvious.
Yeah, I'm not interested in agendas, and I'm not selling nothing, and I don't have a political position. I made that really perfectly clear, and that'll always be the truth of who I am. So I'll never be aligned with any kind of political people. I fucking don't like them. They're all fucking losers. Fuck you, right? Oh, you don't like my choice of language? Well, I'm exercising the freedom of speech. Right? It's important that you do that. And I prefer honesty. So if you don't like me, I prefer that you come up to me and explain to me why and tell me to fuck off. That kind of honesty, I will have a greater appreciation of somebody who's willing to do that than somebody who will smile and it's a fake, disingenuous smile. And as soon as your back's turned, they're fucking, throwing daggers. Like, I go, which is, I just described most of our interactions with most of the people that we have. I go, is that what you really want? Is that the type of relationship that you want with the average person? I go, I don't want to live like that. But I'm also not foolish enough to, put myself in a position where people could take advantage of me.
I was just gonna say, like, those people would suck to be around, but their experiences suck. Like,
Yeah,
they
but
wake up and it's a
well,
shitty
okay,
day.
but this is what I'm trying to tell them. It doesn't have to be.
Exactly.
You can rise above it, right? Look, the only salvation for each and every one of us is the radical evolution, revolution of the individual. Like, it's the transformation of who you are. Society made you in a very particular way. At least the environment contributed to you in a very particular way. Culture, religion, politics, your family, all contributed to who you are. And all I'm saying is that you can take all that power back and you can decide who you are. And then live your life. And then you live your life, trying to live up to who you think you are, or who you're trying to create. So it doesn't matter, again, don't get confused by the language, whether you're finding yourself or creating yourself, it doesn't matter.
You're having a good damn day, like the best damn
Right,
day.
because you're making an effort towards your own advancement as an individual, not material advancement that like it's about a paycheck or some shit like that, right? Don't get lost in that stuff. Remember, that's the conditioning of the society you live in. So I'm asking you to step outside that conditioning. We're always gonna have to be aware of our practical requirements of living within society. So like money and access to the resources we need, food, place to live, and people to love us and people whom we can love. But if you're hate yourself, how could you possibly love anyone else? Right? Can I get a time check?
Yeah, we're at 1 hour 26 minutes.
I'm feeling like I think we've kind of covered this adequately. What do you think?
Yeah, it's not a subject that you can get terribly deep into without bringing in other things like how we deal with personality, how we go through these modes of being. It's
because all those things are part of the entire picture. So you can't just look at the corner of a picture and go, okay, I understand the whole picture. We have to look at all the facets of it. So that means a really broad, kind of gross understanding of what you're dealing with. And what you're dealing with is not just, it's not so simple that you're just a standalone individual. You have all these things that impact you, external influences and forces at work, and then you have all these internal ones now that respond to all those external forces, and all that stuff produces something very specific in you. And all I'm saying is that you can choose to be different. You can choose to be whatever you want by using the same things that make your life negative. You can use those things to make your life very positive. So I'll finish by saying this, that you can choose to be anything, and most of us choose to be nothing. Don't be nothing. You are valuable. Always remember, you are valuable. Don't care if people like you. Care about how valuable you are. Okay, so is there something you'd like to say in closing? No.
Actually, that's exactly. No, I'm joking. I guess a good way to go from here, I would say subjectivity and objectivity. If you haven't seen that, like a lot of these conversations overlap, and this was dedicated to a good chunk of like personal addiction.
Yeah.
But it's like that would be a good episode. Otherwise, your brain will tell you what to do next. It might be mopping the floors, it might be doing your homework, but I feel like the viewer knows what to do next.
What your statement speaks to the idea that it falls to you, the individual.
Yeah.
Right?
Have a damn good day, or else.
or else. Or else.
Yeah, the or else is you don't have a good day, I guess.
Okay, so I think in closing, I'd like to say thank you. Question everything, including yourself, especially yourself. seek balance, seek knowledge, seek understanding, become a renegade, individualist, humanist, critical objective thinker. Thank you for your time.